Have you ever wondered what could possibly ruin your retirement? Well, stay tuned to this episode. Welcome to another episode of Saturday State of Mind. I'm Jess Panico, joined by Mike Panico as always.
It's good to be here, Jess. What I want to talk about is, having done this for 20 years, advising people in terms of preparing and then executing retirement, there's certain consistent habits that people have that kind of just get in their way and disrupt what would otherwise be, I think, a more positive experience with retirement. And a lot of it is self-inflicted.
Sure. And we're talking about these quiet habits that can ruin your retirement, not like going down to the casino and putting it all on black, right?
Right.
So like the little stuff that you might not even understand.
Yeah, we're not talking about gambling or getting into drugs or anything like that. When you're retired, you have more time on your hands, and what you do with that time matters. And sometimes people make really good use with their time. They spend time with their grandkids, or they start volunteering, or they pick up new hobbies. And then there's the other things which we're going to get into, which are the not so good things that you can use with or do with your time.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into habit number 1 right away. Checking your financial accounts constantly.
I was at, I think, a restaurant. It's probably a bad habit of like eavesdropping on what other people are talking about. It's just something what happens when, I don't know, maybe the conversation at my own table is dull.
Mike, I'm generally the one at that table with you, so.
No comment.
Okay.
So there was this guy, and he was talking to what I presume to be like grandkids. I think he had taken his grandkids out for lunch or dinner. And he was saying something like, man, you caught me on a good week. I don't know if you guys saw, but the market was down like 10% last week. And there was no way I would have treated you to lunch that week because my accounts were down. And they went on discussing it, and like the more they discussed it, I could tell he actually wasn't really joking. Mm-hmm. Like, I think this is pretty common for people to check the status of their accounts somewhat habitually. And then as a result of that habitual checking in, I think it can influence how you feel or what activities you engage in day to day. And I think that's a very, very dangerous habit.
It is kind of astonishing how many people are, that dialed into checking. And I'm not, obviously there's negligence on one complete different side of it, but when I meet people for the first time and they ask what I do, I tell them, like, oh man, did you see what the market did yesterday? No. Unless it was something catastrophic that I heard about. No, I don't know what I did yesterday or the day before. I don't check it every single day. And quite frankly, neither should you be either. What does that do to your peace of mind?
It's not good. I mean, I think people understanding of how the market works, which is over longer periods of time, the market tends to be rewarding. Over short periods of time, though, can be all sorts of volatility, big ups, big downs, and that sort of thing. And you don't control any of it. But how you react to good and bad news is distinctly different. It's been said in psychology that the reward you feel from a gain is much less powerful than the pain that you feel from a loss. And so how that translates when you're checking in on your accounts, if your accounts have gone up a little bit, you're up 1 or 2%, you're up a couple $1,000s, you feel okay. You feel pretty good. Like, I don't think that makes you start like skipping on air or like booking, the next trip immediately. You just say, oh, hey, I'm up today. That feels good. But man, if the market goes down, and when it does go down, it tends to go down pretty quickly. They say that the market rises on a staircase and it drops in elevator shafts. When we do have bad markets, they come hard and quick. And so you might be down 5 or 10 or 15%. And that feels awful. Like it feels like I got to cancel any plans that I have. I don't feel good. I don't want to participate with, socially with people. I don't want to talk to people. I just want to shut all the shades and be like angry. You put things on hold. You start checking more religiously. Have I made my money back? You don't control any of this. And so to watch it day to day and allow your moods to swing with the ebbing and the flowing of the market just is not healthy behavior.
Right. And some people might be retired for 20, 30 years. Do you know how often the market is going to go down in that time frame? A lot. And so, I tell people, and it's half tongue in cheek, but it's also half serious. When you take a stroke or have a heart attack one day, it'll say stroke or heart attack on your death certificate. But then if you ask somebody, why did they have a stroke or a heart attack? The underlying cause for this almost always is stress. And then so you'd ask, like, why were you stressed out? Might have been a contributor, have been the fact that you were checking your finances constantly, letting like your heart rate go up and down with the market. It's just not like, we're not advising for people to not pay attention, to not look at your stuff, but checking in a handful of times per year is generally plenty just to make some tax moves, make some tweaks to your allocation, rebalance. We know ups and downs happen. So then rather than just watching them, let time take its course, trust in your plan, and go do something else with your time. All right. So moving on to habit number 2 that could silently ruin your retirement. It's consuming the news all day. So just like you're checking your portfolio all the time, constantly listening to the news.
Sure. You're not at work anymore, so you might be around the house, working in the garage, something like that. And so, I want something on in the background. And if it's not music, what I find a lot of people put on is they put on the news. Like, I just want to be informed. What's going on in the world? What are people talking about? It's kind of similar, right? There is some good news, but generally not on the television or on the internet. Generally, what you see is all the crazy, like, homicide scenes, all this titillating, like, disasters that are happening all over the planet. Generally, the more gruesome or bloody the event is, the more news attention that it's going to get, right?
This day and age, it's a 24/7 news cycle. So it's always on, and they're talking about the same things over and over, and they're talking about what things could be. And I don't know, if you're hearing happy news, that's great. I don't know where you're going for that, because a lot of it is fear-mongering.
Right. You turn it on, what do you see? You see car crashes, you see earthquakes, you see people with bulging veins and bloodshot eyes screaming at each other in Washington, D.C. It's just distinctly negative, and with good reason. I've often put forward to people that the news is not in the business of informing you. They're in the business of selling advertisements. That's how the news makes money, right? So how do you get people to stick around through the commercial break and consume all those ads so you can get more ad revenue? You got to keep people on the hook. And generally the thing that keeps people there is fear. What is happening out there? Who died in that car crash? What's happening? Who in Washington is taking things away from me? Most news, to keep people glued to the set, are trying to keep you upset, angry, scared, some combination of negative emotions, because they found long ago, decades ago, that if they just showed feel-good stories and reported on good stuff, people didn't stick around. They'd move on to something else to occupy their attention. And I'm not suggesting that you not be informed.
Sure.
I like checking in on the world and seeing what's happening on a given day, but it's a light check-in, and then I move on. It's not something that I engage with for, like, hours at a time, because you're not generally being informed. You're being brought into a state of agitation or fear or anger. And I tell people, you are what you eat. I think people understand, if I eat a bunch of junk food, cupcakes and ice cream, I'm going to feel like junk later, because that's not great and healthy for me. You are also what you consume through your eyes and ears. And if everything that you're consuming is negative, how do you imagine that impacts then how you're going to interact with the rest of the world, or the rest of your day, or the rest of the people that you care about?
Well, don't you even tell your kids, don't hang out with these bad influences and peers that are putting you down and things like that? It's the same thing. It's just all you're consuming this information. So, all right. So that's the second habit we're going to stay. We got one more habit to go over. If this is helpful, hit the subscribe button. Last sneaky bad habit that could ruin your retirement is defaulting to endless social media. All right, talk about toxic things.
It's kind of the mother load, right? We just talked about how the news keeps you glued through fear and agitation, and financial markets go up and down. They can be scary. And social media is like the super evolved predator of just occupying your attention and also making you feel agitated, angry, fearful a lot. Just whether we're talking about checking in on your financial accounts, watching the news, social media, there's a cope that you hear. Social media, to some extent, is what people are doing and how they're interacting with each other, right? Like, someone went on a vacation, somebody just had a birthday, but a lot of that stuff is people in their best moments. Nobody puts their morning hangover on social media, or when their heart was broken, or, you during the worst part of your day. A lot of times what happens with social media is that we feel depressed through comparison. I didn't have a good day, but look at all these other people who had a fantastic day. Sometimes it's positive. I don't want to just treat this as an entirely negative thing.
Sure.
But there's a trapping to social media where you go to just check in on it for a few minutes. You find yourself there scrolling for sometimes hours. You can find yourself either bummed out through comparison. It seems like everybody else is having their best day, but I'm not.
Right.
You can get caught up in comparison. How come their life seems great and mine isn't, right? Or you start to get caught up in some of the stuff related to either the traditional news, or what you see with financial markets and similar, which is the political opinions, the religious rants of complete strangers. And sometimes even people that you're closely related to or friends, and you just start arguing about, would you walk into a Walmart and on a given aisle just start arguing with people about their politics?
They got the keyboard warriors behind the screen and telling you how they really feel, but you would never act like that in polite society.
I'm just trying to say, because this is one of the more difficult ones to unpack. As much as there is positive things that you find through social media,
Sure.
There's a lot of negative stuff. And in fact, again, because it's such a great commander of attention, people will spend a disproportionate amount of time there. And the next you turn your head up and you've spent half of your day on Facebook. So what you do with your time matters. What you put into your eyes and ears matters. And I think a lot of times retirees make a mistake of getting drawn too much into the metaverse and getting caught up in the ebbs and flows of what's happening in life. And oftentimes it can be distinctly negative. And that's not just, it's not great habit to stay in that kind of mind state.
So I think, individually, none of these are necessarily bad, but certainly in combination, and there's so much of too much of a good thing, right?
Everything in moderation.
Well, if this video is helpful for you, hit that subscribe button and check out our other video, 3 Hard Truths About Retirement. See you next time.